Thursday, the day the news took a shite in a bag. Tonight's top-tier terrors. Al Capone does time. IRS says pay up, punk. Porter Plague brings London to its knees. And 4. Open Championship tees off with a bang. Plus, coming up, the world's longest marathon ends in heartbreak when runner discovers he's left his wife at the starting line. Those are the headlines. Down the rabbit hole we go.
Newsbang, the beacon of clarity in the fog of fiction. Titles till the sit, 1931.
Al Capone, the dapper Don of Chicago, has been brought down by a weapon more potent than any Tommy gun, a tax audit. The mobster, whose accounting skills were as questionable as his business practices, was convicted on 5 counts of tax evasion.
Federal agents, fueled by righteousness and a thirst for justice, meticulously followed a trail of receipts and invoices, exposing Capone's illicit fortune and leaving his criminal empire in tatters.
Eyewitness Mabel Floozy, a showgirl from Capone's favourite speakeasy, quipped, "I knew those dancing lessons would come back to haunt him."
Chicago's underworld is now scrambling for a new leader and a decent accountant.
1814.
Disaster has struck London. A tsunami of beer has engulfed the city, leaving a trail of destruction and intoxicated citizens in its wake. A vat at the Horseshoe Brewery burst, unleashing a frothy deluge of over 3.5 million litres upon unsuspecting Londoners.
Eyewitnesses report scenes of drunken mayhem as residents, swept away by the torrent, were seen merrily paddling on barrels and singing off-key pub songs. "It's a bloody miracle," slurred one soaked local. "The streets are paved with beer."
Tragically, 9 souls perished in this boozy apocalypse, victims of accidental drowning or perhaps sheer overindulgence. The city now smells of hops, regret and damp socks.
1860.
The first Open Championship has exposed a sinister plot to legitimize the mind-numbingly dull pursuit of golf. 8 unsuspecting Scotsmen were lured to Prestwick Golf Club under the guise of sporting competition, only to find themselves trapped in a 36-hole endurance test of truly epic proportions.
Eyewitnesses report grown men reduced to tears as they wrestled with their primitive clubs and a seemingly endless supply of sand traps. One participant, Angus McHaggis, was heard to cry, "Mother, mercy!" as he collapsed on the 18th green.
The event's organizer, Lord Whackenballs, a man with more money than sense, declared, "It's character building. Builds character, it does." Critics warn this is the beginning of a dangerous trend, one that could lead to the legitimization of other absurd activities like cricket or competitive knitting.
Newsbang, the absurdity of absurdity bound in newsprint.
And now, with a forecast that's sure to dampen your spirits and chill you to the bone, here's our weather guru, the inimitable Shakanaka Giles.
Good evening. Old Man Winter has arrived early this year, and he's brought with him a particularly nasty consignment of frigid air. Brace yourselves. Down south, rain. Torrential, relentless, soul-drenching rain. The sort of rain that makes you question the very existence of sunshine. Stay indoors if you value your dry socks. Up north, temperatures are plummeting faster than a politician's approval ratings during a scandal. It's so cold, your nose hairs will freeze on impact. If you must venture out, dress like an Arctic explorer and consider hibernation. In the east, fog, thick, soupy, disorienting fog. Visibility will be reduced to the length of your arm. So, if you're driving, proceed with caution. Or, better yet, stay home and read a book. That's the weather. Stay warm if you can.
Amerikud, 1973.
And on this day in 1973, the sands of the Sinai Peninsula ran red with oil and blood as Israeli and Egyptian forces clashed in a titanic tank battle. The conflict, now known as the Battle of the Chinese Farm, saw American M60A1s face off against Soviet T-62s in a display of mechanized might that would make even the most hardened war correspondent reach for a stiff drink. With over 150 Israeli soldiers killed and hundreds of tanks reduced to smoldering scrap metal, the battle proved a pivotal moment in the Yom Kippur War. For more on this explosive piece of history, we go now to our war correspondent, Brian Bastable.
The sky above me is black with the smoke of high explosives. The sand beneath my feet is red with blood. This is the Chinese Farm, 1973, and I'm standing, as luck would have it, in the epicenter of hell. Just moments ago, wave after wave of Egyptian tanks, their gun barrels glinting in the harsh desert sun, came crashing through the Israeli lines like a plague of mechanized locusts. The earth shook under their treads. The air was torn by their cannons. But the Israelis held fast. Like modern-day Maccabees, they stood their ground, even as their comrades were blown to bits around them. I watched one young soldier, no more than a boy really, cradling the shattered remains of his best friend. "Tell my mother I died well," he said before a shell took his head clean off. The Egyptians had numbers on their side. The Israelis, sheer grit and determination. Tank met tank in a clash of steel and will. The heat from the burning hulks was enough to melt the flesh from your bones. And yet, in the midst of this maelstrom, the Israelis saw their chance, a weak point in the Egyptian line, a chance to push through, to cross the canal, to turn the tide of war. They surged forward, heedless of the cost, determined to seize the day. The Egyptians fell back, their resolve crumbling in the face of such relentless fury. I saw one tank commander, his face a mask of blood, pounding on the hatch of his burning vehicle, screaming for his mother as the flames consumed him. And now, as the sun sets over this blasted wasteland, the Israelis have done the impossible. They have built a bridge across the Suez, across the very jaws of death itself. The first vehicles are rumbling across even as I speak, carrying the hopes and dreams of a nation on their armored backs. This is Brian Bastable, reporting from the front lines of history, from the very gates of hell itself. And as the night falls and the great bridge rises, I am reminded of the words of the poet. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. Here at the Chinese Farm it ended in both.
Chronicles, 1931.
And on this day in 1931, notorious Chicago gangster Al Capone found himself on the wrong side of the law, not for his murderous exploits, but for failing to file his tax returns. In a twist that would make even the most hardened criminal accountant weep, Capone's empire crumbled faster than a poorly constructed speakeasy. The government's T-men proved that even the most feared mobster is no match for the relentless pursuit of the taxman. Capone's famous boast that they can't collect legal taxes from illegal money now rings as hollow as his empty vault. For more on this historic takedown, we go to our crime correspondent, Ken Schitt.
Listen up, you degenerates. The year is 1931, and the king of Chicago's criminal underworld just got his crown knocked off by a bunch of pencil-pushing bean counters. That's right, Al Scarface Capone, the big cheese of bootlegging, just got his ass handed to him on a silver platter of tax evasion charges. This cocky son of a bitch thought he was untouchable, bragging that they can't collect legal taxes from illegal money. Well, surprise, motherfucker. The T-men, Uncle Sam's financial bloodhounds, just sniffed out your dirty laundry and hung it out to dry. 5 counts of tax evasion. 5! That's like getting caught with your pants down in a whorehouse while the preacher's wife is watching. Capone's been living large, flashing cash like a drunk sailor on shore leave, all while crying poverty to the taxman. But the jig is up, and now he's facing 11 years in the slammer, the longest stretch ever handed down for cooking the books. This ain't just a slap on the wrist, folks. This is the government grabbing Capone by the balls and squeezing until his eyes pop out. His empire's crumbling faster than a sandcastle in a tsunami, and all because he couldn't be bothered to pay his fair share. So remember, you miserable bastards, even if you're the biggest, baddest wolf in the concrete jungle, Uncle Sam will always find a way to bite you in the ass. This is Ken Shit, reminding you that crime doesn't pay, but taxes sure as hell do.
1964.
And now, a report from this day in 1964, when Australia's capital city, Canberra, finally got wet. Yes, the long-awaited Lake Burley Griffin was inaugurated, transforming the dusty landscape into a watery wonderland. Prime Minister Robert Menzies declared the lake open, fulfilling architect Walter Burley Griffin's half-century-old vision. The event marked a pivotal moment in Canberra's evolution from a sheep paddock to a modern capital. For more on this aquatic achievement, we go to our correspondent Hardiman Pesto.
Martin, I'm here in Canberra, where Prime Minister Robert Menzies has just inaugurated the artificial Lake Burley Griffin. It's a momentous occasion, with crowds cheering as the water gushes in. I'm joined by renowned hydrologist Professor Aqua McSplash. Professor, your thoughts?
Well, it's certainly wet.
Pesto, are you actually there? Because this event happened 60 years ago.
Of course I'm here, Martin. I can see the water rising as we speak. It's quite spectacular.
And what exactly is the water level now, Pesto?
Oh, it's about knee-deep, I'd say. Wouldn't you agree, Professor McSplash?
Actually, the lake is 11 meters deep at its maximum point.
Pesto, are you standing in the lake?
Well, Martin, as a dedicated journalist, I believe in immersing myself in the story.
So you're telling me you're standing in 11 meters of water?
It's a bit chilly, I must say.
Pesto, unless you've grown gills in the last 5 minutes, I'm finding this hard to believe. Professor McSplash, can you describe what you're seeing?
I'm seeing a man in a suit pretending to be in water that isn't there.
Now, Professor, don't sell the lake short. It's a marvel of engineering, isn't it?
It certainly is, but it took years to fill. It didn't just appear overnight.
Pesto, did you actually speak to Prime Minister Menzies?
Oh yes, Martin. We had a lovely chat about the lake. He said, and I quote, "This lake is going to be huge, mate. It's going to be the best lake. Nobody builds lakes like we do."
That doesn't sound like Robert Menzies at all. It sounds more like...
a visionary leader, Martin. That's what it sounds like.
I'm quite certain Prime Minister Menzies never used the word mate in formal speeches.
Pesto, I'm beginning to think you're not actually in 1964 Canberra at all. Where are you, really?
Martin, I'm offended by your lack of faith. I'm standing right here in the middle of Lake Burley Griffin, surrounded by the sights and sounds of 1964 Australia.
He's in a paddling pool in the BBC car park.
Is this true, Pesto?
Well, Martin, when you think about it, isn't all of life just one big paddling pool?
No, Pesto, it isn't. Thank you for that enlightening report from the shores of Lake Burley Griffin, or should I say the shallow end of journalistic integrity.
Newsbang. No surrender to falsehoods, uncaging the truth in every story. 1860 ni 60.
And now, our sports correspondent Ryder Boff takes us back to the year 1860 for a look at the very first Open Championship at Prestwick Golf Club.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, we travel back in time to the year 1860, where the world of golf is about to be turned on its head like a poorly aimed tee shot. Yes, it's the very first Open Championship at Prestwick Golf Club in Bonnie, Scotland, where 8 of the finest ball whackers this side of the North Sea have gathered to determine who's the best at hitting a tiny white sphere into an even tinier hole. Leading the pack is Willie Whirlwind Park Sr., swinging his club like it's possessed by the ghost of Robert the Bruce himself. Hot on his heels is the legendary Tom Thunderbolt Morris Sr., whose moustache is so magnificent, it's rumoured to have its own caddy.
Morris is lining up his putt now, folks. He's got a look of concentration on his face that could curdle a pint of ale. The crowd's hushed. You could hear a haggis drop. He putts, and it lips the cup. Oh dear, so close. He looks like he's just swallowed a particularly sour neep. Mind you, that's golf for you. A game of inches and near misses. Rather like my love life, come to think of it.
Then we've got the Strath brothers, Andrew the Anvil and David the Dervish, whose sibling rivalry is fiercer than two badgers fighting over the last haggis in Scotland.
And here comes the Anvil, striding onto the green like a colossus. He's built like a brick outhouse and swings that club like he's trying to demolish it. His brother, the Dervish, is watching him intently, a look on his face that could melt steel. I wouldn't want to get caught between those two on a bad day, folks. It'd be like trying to separate two fighting ferrets with your bare hands.
But let's not forget Jamie Jammy Anderson, Mungo the Mongoose Park, Robert the Rascal Pringle, and William Wobbly Dow, each one of them ready to tackle Prestwick's treacherous 12-hole course, which, I might add, makes the Somme look like a leisurely stroll through the heather. Now, I know what you're thinking. 12 holes? That's not cricket. Well, neither is golf, you numpty, but fear not, for in a mere 12 years, they'll expand it to a whopping 18 holes. Progress, my friends, is as unstoppable as my ex-wife's spending habits. The format is simple. 3 rounds of 12 holes all in one day. It's a test of endurance that would make a Highland Games competitor weep into his sporran. The golfer with the lowest aggregate score takes home the glory, and possibly a nasty case of sunburn. This is Scotland, after all.
And there goes Park Senior, lining up his tee shot. He swings. It's a screamer. The ball soars through the air like a majestic golden eagle, or possibly a slightly less majestic wood pigeon. Either way, it's impressive stuff. He's got swing like a well-oiled metronome. Makes my own swing look like a windmill in a hurricane. Speaking of windmills, did I ever tell you about the time I tried to play golf using a Dutch clog as a club? Let's just say it didn't end well.
I'm reminded of my own golfing exploits back in '79. There I was, facing down the fearsome Widowmaker at Bogey on the Wold. The wind was howling like a banshee with a stubbed toe. The rain was coming down sideways, and my caddy had just eloped with the club's resident sheep. But did I give up? No, sir. I gritted my teeth, took aim, and promptly sliced my ball into the adjacent village, where it shattered the stained glass window of St. Bogey's Church. I maintain to this day that it was an act of divine intervention. But I digress. Back to Prestwick, where Willie Park Sr. has just clinched victory with a score of 174, beating Tom Morris Sr. by a mere 2 strokes. It's a moment that will go down in history, much like my infamous trouser incident at the '86 Wimbledon mixed doubles.
Park Senior sinks the final putt. The crowd goes wild. They're cheering, they're clapping, they're mostly just politely nodding their approval. It was a different time, folks. A time when people didn't feel the need to express their emotions by throwing their undergarments onto the green. A more civilized era, some might say. Personally, I'm just glad I didn't lose my trousers this time.
And there you have it, folks. The birth of the Open Championship, where legends are made and many, many balls are lost. This is Ryder Boff, reporting from 1860, where the future of golf is as bright as a freshly polished set of spats.
And now, for a look at the state of Britain's transport network, here's our travel correspondent Polly Beep with her take on the chaos unfolding on our roads and railways.
Good evening, road warriors and rail ramblers. Polly Beep here with your Thursday traffic tidbits. We're starting in Hatfield, where a high-speed train has decided to take an unexpected detour through a field. It seems the driver mistook a cow for a green signal. Expect delays longer than a queue for a cuppa at a Women's Institute meeting. On the M1, it's a jumbo jam. A herd of escaped circus elephants is holding a trunk-shaking party in the middle of the motorway. Traffic's backed up for miles, and I wouldn't be surprised if a few motorists have joined in the conga line. Down in London, it's musical chairs madness. Commuters are swapping seats, dodging buses, and generally behaving like they've had one too many cups of strong tea. Avoid it like the plague, unless you fancy a spot of impromptu acrobatics. And on the M25, a broken-down disco is causing a boogie-tastic blockage. Mirror balls, flashing lights, and a sound system that could wake the dead. It's a rave on wheels. Drivers are advised to bring their dancing shoes and glow sticks. Stay safe out there, and remember, in the grand race of life, sometimes it's better to be the tortoise than the derailed hare. This is Polly Beep signing off and clinging to the nearest stable object.
1814.
And now, our science correspondent Calamity Prendeville brings us a rather frothy tale from the annals of British brewing history. Calamity, what's on tap for us today?
Good evening, viewers. Today we're commemorating a pivotal moment in British brewing history. On this day in 1814, London experienced what can only be described as a tidal wave of tipple.
Thanks to cutting-edge British innovation in vat technology, the Horseshoe Brewery created a colossal wooden beer container standing proudly at 22 feet tall. This marvel of engineering was designed to hold enough porter to quench the thirst of every Londoner twice over.
But alas, even British ingenuity has its limits. The vat, overcome with excitement at containing such a vast quantity of the nation's favourite beverage, decided to share its contents with the surrounding neighbourhood. In a spectacular display of generosity, it burst open, releasing a tsunami of dark, frothy goodness.
The resulting beer flood swept through the streets, proving that British ale truly waits for no man, or woman for that matter. 8 unfortunate souls found themselves quite literally drowning their sorrows.
But it wasn't all doom and gloom. This catastrophe led to further British innovation. The Moo Company, not to be deterred, invented the world's first beer sponge, a giant contraption designed to mop up wayward ale and return it to the vats. Waste not, want not.
The flood also gave birth to London's first amphibious pub, the Tipsy Tadpole, where patrons could enjoy a pint while floating down the beer-logged streets.
So raise a glass to British ingenuity, folks, from disaster springs opportunity, and in this case, a river of porter. This is Calamity Prendeville, reminding you to drink responsibly, and perhaps invest in a pair of water wings. Cheers.
Dres Newsbang. Truth hurts, but it's the only cure for bullshit flu.
And finally, let's riffle through tomorrow's rag pile, shall we? The Times screams, Royal Navy Nuketown. The Independent gasps, Albanian port nicked in Norman knick-knack. And the Mail roars, Filipinos find Murica. First. The Telegraph, Tut-tuts with Pooh Bears run amok in Parliament Square. While the Mirror bellows, East End hardman on 10-day pub crawl. And finally, today titters, Puffer Hitman hangs up his shoes. Well, that's your lot. Don't move, you scum, until we blast your face with news again at 9 a.m. sharp. Thanks for nothing. Now breathe through your nose like a good little sheep.
Tune in next time for more artificially intelligent hilarity. Newsbang is a comedy show, written and recorded by AI. All voices impersonated. Nothing here is real. Good night.